G's, no design on my jacket. Work hard and I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't hearing that racket. Dots came in, you know how to stack it. Don't take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so I'm talking real slurry. Got a blast, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is Adam Caplan with AC Radio, the voice in your ears. Let's just say we got a lot to talk about here because we are fresh off of a professional fight league championship event at the Madison Square Garden Hulu Theater in New York, New York. It was a great night. It was a great night of fights. Why? Because at the end of every single season of the PFL promotion, each fighter gets the opportunity to fight for $1 million should they make it through their regular season fights and go through to the playoffs. And I just love that concept because every single year, 5 or 6 fighters get the opportunity to have their lives changed. Winning $1 million while fighting MMA is a lot of money. I would say that is close to, over 95 to 98% of what the UFC fighters make, at the end of every year. There's only the top 1 to 2% that are making over $1 million by the end of the year. So, not only do the PFL guys, if they win the season, win $1 million, they also get paid per fight in the regular season and, of course, the playoffs. So there's a lot of change to be made in PFL, which is why we've seen great UFC fighters like Shane Burgos make the switch over. And it's also been a great place for fighters that are more towards the end of their career and want to make money and want to be active with, as well, young, hungry prospects that we have seen climb that ladder in PFL and make a name for themselves. So I'm loving the product. Last episode we spoke about Bellator. I praised them highly. And once again, with PFL, I got to say, I was very, very impressed with the product. So let's get into it. First one on the night, we had Rob Wilkinson defeat Omari Akhmedov for the light heavyweight championship and, of course, the chance to win $1 million. Both guys fought in the UFC. Rob Wilkinson fought Israel Adesanya when Izzy made his debut in the UFC, and Izzy won that fight by TKO. And you fast forward the clock, and now Rob Wilkinson is a champion in PFL, a world champion, as they say. But as I was telling Brett before the show, I do think that the only world championship is the UFC. So anyway, he's $1 million richer, more importantly, and he put on a great fucking performance against Omari Akhmedov, who also fought in the UFC and fought a former world champion in Chris Weidman when Chris was at, kind of the tail end of his career. And Omari found a place as well in PFL, but he also found himself on the end of some very big punches by Rob Wilkinson, who put on a great performance, had a great regular season, finishing every fighter inside 1 to 2 rounds. Omari took a little bit longer, took a lot of shots in the process, and did absorb a lot of damage. At some points, it was a little bit tough in thinking that his corner was really trying to pump him up to try to steal the rest of the fight, when it was pretty evident that Rob was going to take it and run. So congrats to Rob Wilkinson. First one of the night, $1 million richer, Australia's own, I believe also Colorado's own, Rob Wilkinson. And that's the beauty of PFL. A couple of years ago, you're losing to Israel Adesanya in your debut. You're not sure where your career is going to go because you've now lost by TKO in your home country to a future world champion, now former world champion. Fast forward the clock, he's $1 million richer. So that's the beauty of PFL, is that every single year, baby, you get the opportunity to have your life changed. Next, we had Sadibou defeating Dilano Taylor. Listen, man, Delano Taylor winning by TKO in the semifinals against Canada's own Rory McDonald was a fucking feat in its own, especially ranked 2 Rory McDonald against 7 Taylor. That was a tough pill for us to swallow as Canadians. He ended up winning that, going to face Sadibou, who also beat Rory McDonald in the finals of last year. So, we or the semis, I believe. So we almost got a rematch in Rory versus Sadibou, but instead we got Taylor and Sadibou. He controlled the fight, Sweden's own. Sai controlled the fight for all 5 rounds. Taylor didn't have much to answer. Congrats to Sadibou Sai. And your boy AC was 2 for 2 already on his picks. So, would have loved to see the Rory McDonald rematch, but it is what it is. And then we're moving on. We had Olivier Aubien-Mercier, Quebec zone, Canada zone, the Ultimate Fighter Canada winner for the UFC, had a good run in the UFC, but like other guys did, decided to go over to PFL, be more active, maybe get treated a little bit better as well, and most importantly, make more cheddar, make more guapo. And that's exactly what fucking Aubin-Mercier did. He went in there against Stevie Ray, Scotland's own, another guy who fought in the UFC as well. I believe also Stevie Ray trained at TriStar for a little bit too. So there's a little bit of a storyline there as well, because TriStar guys treat visitors very, very well when they come over here. So that sometimes has to be tough. But Aubin-Mercier, I was expecting him to win by decision, take the same course that he has been doing over the entire season for PFL. But fuck, man, he went in there, starched Stevie Ray, knocked him out in the second round. Canada finally has a world champion in a major promotion in Olivier Aubin-Mercier. As well to join him, John DeBella, who's now the strawweight world champion in 1 championships kickboxing division. So we're 2 for 2 almost at the end of the year. Thank God for that, fellas, because we've been lacking a little bit. So big ups to DeBella, big ups to Aubin-Mercier, and he's $1 million richer. He's putting more cheese on that poutine now. You could bet your ass of that. And again, man, that's why I love PFL. Every single fight on this card, lives were being changed. So I gotta love it. Next one, we have Aspen Ladd defeating Julia Budd. Listen, I'm going to breeze through that because that wasn't a championship fight for the season. But listen, man, Aspen Ladd just got cut from the UFC. Quick turnaround, goes in there in a monster in Julia Budd, wins a split decision. And it was just nice to see Aspen relaxed in there and just let her hands go and just let the fight take its course. Obviously with her confidence and control. So she etched out a close one. Julia Budd, a warrior, a fucking scary fighter to get into the octagon with, and usually always makes it tough for her opponents, whether it's in defeat and, of course, in victory. So that was nice to see Aspen back on the winning course. And then we had Ante Delija defeating Mattheus Scheffel. And, usually AC doesn't read the names on the show, but, now that we're talking about newer promotions, I want to make sure that I'm obviously pronouncing everybody's names correctly and that I'm giving it to you in chronological order. So listen, man, Delija, what was interesting about that is he lost in the finals last year. And then he goes out there and he starches Mattheus Scheffel, wins by TKO in the same fashion that he had basically been doing throughout this entire season. And, like we almost saw Sadibou Sai versus Rory McDonald for a little bit of redemption for that $1 million, Ante got that opportunity and won that million in great fashion, winning by TKO. And let's be real here, when you got 2 heavyweights fighting for $1 million fucking dollars, you bet your ass that there was going to be a finish in that one. So if you threw a couple of shekels on that to go inside the distance, your return probably wasn't that much, because it was guaranteed that it was going to finish early. So congratulations to Croatia's own. Nice to see a world champion now from Croatia since the great Mirko Krokop in the heavyweight division, that is, So TKO, first round, 2 minutes and 50 seconds, Croatia's own, Ante Delija. Congratulations. And then we move on to the semifinals, the reason why AC was tuning into the show. And you know what that means. It's sippy time. We got Brendan Loughnane versus Bubba Jenkins. These guys have been jawing at each other in the media, in the face-to-faces, in the press conferences, on their personal social media accounts. These guys were the reason why there was a lot of hype going around this event, was because of those 2 fighters. Brendan Loughnane lost in the semifinals last year, and that was a heartbreaker. That was a heartbreaker because he was one of the favorites, or at least the most well-received and well-liked fighter to go on, and at least fans wanted to see him win that tournament. Didn't happen. In terms of Brendan Loughnane and Bubba Jenkins, you know, there was just such a better storyline there because of all the jawing back and forth in the pre-fight buildup. And both of these guys understood how to sell a fight, and both of these guys have a really great way of really towing the line of that cocky and versus confidence mentality. So that's what made for an interesting matchup. But the story was Brendan Loughnane's jab and Brendan Loughnane's leg kicks. That was clearly freezing Bubba Jenkins. And although Loughnane had a little bit of blood on the bridge of the nose because Bubba landed a few good punches of his own, Brendan Loughnane was the story of the night. Manchester zone, switching stances, utilizing that jab, smoking Bubba Jenkins' lead leg with that leg kick, and then ends up winning the fight by TKO. He's got his mother, his girlfriend, and his family in the crowd. He wins the $1 million and the featherweight championship for the PFL promotion, and he was just elated, emotional, and you gotta feel for Brendan because he has had a fucking career and a half. Okay, he had a great run in the Ultimate Fighter, representing Team UK. He fought in the UFC for a little bit, then they released him. He went in there on the regional circuit and did his thing, and then ended up fighting in, you know what? Let's pull it up right now. Let's get it straight. Let's get it straight. You know, because Brendan Loughnane is somebody that I am very passionate about as a fight fan as well. And I'll tell you why, because not many guys go from the Ultimate Fighter to then the UFC at a very, very young age. I believe he was 19, 20, 21 years old, and then end up having to go and fight back in the smaller circuits like BAMA, like ACB, then going to PFL. This guy has went to Russia, back to England, then fighting in the United States. Why? Because he had $1 and a dream, and that's exactly what he fucking did on Friday night at the Hulu Theater, winning in the later rounds, breaking down Bubba Jenkins, never shying down from the shit talk, never shying down from the jawing. Why? Because that's what he fucking lives for. Training all around the world, being in shape every single moment in every single day of every single each year by training his ass off in Dubai, Manchester, and of course, Thailand as well. You know, it's hard not to like a guy like Brendan Loughnane. Switches stances, utilizes that jab like a stud, breaks down his opponent with his charisma and his athleticism, but as well, you know, he's a technician in there. And, you know, you just got to love to see it that he's $1 million richer, because there was a story once where he was brought in to fight a big-time wrestler on Dana White's Contender Series, and he was brought in to more or less lose. And he ended up not only winning that fight, but wrestling the wrestler. And what did they do? They didn't give him a fucking contract. And that lit a fire under Brendan Loughnane's ass. And look at him now. $1 million richer, has more notoriety and respect than most guys in the UFC. And let's be real here, he was 1 or 2 moves away last year from being $2 million richer, because he would have went on to the finals for a more favorable matchup than the Russian he fought in the semis. So once again, baby, this is why AC is loving PFL. And I got to say, you know, maybe call me biased. It's hard for me not to say that this might not be, or this might be actually, in fact, the second best promotion. So that's my rant on Brendan Loughnane. Congratulations to him. And then we move on to Kayla Harrison versus Larissa Pacheco. And let's just say Kayla Harrison at -900 was obviously raring to go to win in dominant fashion, and that didn't happen. The fight ended up going 5 rounds. Kayla Harrison showed a lot of holes in her game. She showed that she wasn't interested in biting down on her mouth guard and going blow for blow with Pacheco. She also showed that her wrestling isn't as dominant in the scrambles, in the exchanges. You know, it really showed that her judo, when she has her opponent up against the cage, is really the only bread and butter that, you know, could have worked against Pacheco. And then on the flip side, Pacheco gave up so many goddamn dominant positions to go for the submission that she could have won the fight by unanimous decision instead of a split decision. So I actually thought that Pacheco made the fight harder for her by, being irresponsible on the ground. She could have easily taken that fight 3-2 or even 4-1 had she been more diligent in maintaining her position over her submission, because Kayla Harrison showed that she wasn't interested in striking with Pacheco. So congratulations to Pacheco, wins by split decision, $1 million richer, the light heavyweight women's champion. And it's interesting for Kayla Harrison because she won PFL in 2019 and 2021, so she's won $2 million for them and 2 championships. She's more or less been the face. She has been the Ronda Rousey of the PFL. And what's interesting about this is like all the bravado and the alpha mentality and all of those things really fucking come back to bite you in the ass when you go out there and you lose a fight, especially a close one when it was yours to take. But, you just, I guess, either didn't show up or showed holes in your game, and we thought that for Ronda. We thought that she just didn't show up that night. And then we watched the next 1 or 2 performances, or the next 1 performance from her against Nunes, and we realized, no, it ain't the fact that she ain't showing up. It's that if you nullify the fact that she'll put you up against the cage and go for that armbar submission, she ain't really got much for you. And that was kind of what we saw with Kayla Harrison as well. And I know I'm being critical, but listen, people like Conor McGregor, people like Israel Adesanya, they talk and they're brash and they're dickheads and they're annoying. And some of them, do, a little bit of criminal offenses or whatever the case may be, but they are glorious and gracious in defeat. And I hate to pin 2 guys up against 2 girls. It's not the way AC rolls, but these are just 4 prime examples of superstars in mixed martial arts handling their losses differently. And I got to say that although, Kayla did give congratulations to Pacheco, she obviously handled it better than Ronda Rousey. But what I got to say is that if you step up to that plate and you bet everything on the line on that mic, that's what happens. Is sometimes you fall up short and you got to swallow your pride. And, being the last fight on her contract for PFL, probably in the midst of making her next biggest move, let's just say a loss like this, not only showing holes in her game, but having to swallow her pride and then go on to her next chapter with a loss. Hopefully this humbles Kayla Harrison a little bit, because I do think she could turn down the volume a little bit, just a little bit. So congratulations to Larissa Pacheco. Let's just say, Kayla Harrison got a hot cup of that humbleness, and that's all good because she's a superstar, one of the best female fighters in mixed martial arts on the planet. She'll absolutely be back, making more money than ever. And I guess the reason why I was being so critical is because when you talk and you talk and you talk and you talk, and then you get fed, a little bit of that humble pie, this is how people respond. Some, rub your back, and then others kind of go, yeah, that's the fucking game, man. Told you. So that's what I got for you on PFL. I love the absolute event. And let's move over to a little bit of UFC. December 3rd in Orlando, Florida, the main event in Kevin Holland versus Stephen Thompson, a great fight. Look, Stephen Thompson hasn't fought in a very long while. We're not sure how he's going to fare in the octagon. Will this be his last fight? We don't know. Or is this his last test to kind of see where he maybe feels in wanting to further his career? And then we got Kevin Holland, who's fresh off of a loss against Khamzat Chimaev and is also fresh off of retiring for all of 5 seconds before he got on the phone with his dear friend, UFC president Dana White. I don't know. It's like, are both guys going to retire after this fight? Are both guys going to go on to, preach about how they want to go on a title fight? We're not really sure where the story goes for both of these guys, but we do know is they're both some of the most likable guys in the UFC. You got the nicest motherfucker in the UFC and Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fighting Big Mouth himself, Kevin Holland, who's made a great name for himself in a very short amount of time. And Kevin Holland actually had the pleasure of hosting Stephen Wonderboy Thompson on his podcast, and I love to see that. Why? Because these guys know when to draw the line, and they also know that this is to an extent in the entertainment business. And Kevin Holland is like, bro, if I have you on the podcast, we're going to bring more viewers to this who are going to want to watch more of us, which is going to bring more eyes to the show. And let's be real here, maybe we'll get a little side ting check from Dana White after it. So let's do it, baby. So I love that dynamic. It's going to be interesting. Why? Because Kevin Holland is a striker. Yes, he's been working on his grappling and his wrestling. He's a purple belt now, going on to brown belt, maybe, whatever. But let's be real here. He's there to strike. And obviously we know Wonder Boy is too. And we obviously know what Wonder Boy is capable of with his kickboxing and his style. Clearly, Kevin Holland will have not ever seen an opponent like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in the octagon, perhaps in the training room. So that's going to pose for some difficulties for Kevin Holland. And then obviously Wonderboy being off for a while is going to pose for some difficulties too. So I'm looking forward to the matchup. 5-round fight in Orlando, Florida. We got Kevin Holland versus Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. And let's just say we got a couple of other bangers on this card. We got Brian Barberena versus Rafael Dos Anjos. Barberina's on a little bit of a run now. Dos Anjos is obviously always Dos Anjos. He's always in there. He's always one or two, or 2 or 3 wins away from being in title talk. And I'm looking forward to this. Why? Because Dos Anjos is shorter for the division, but he's dense enough. Barberena's a big fucking dude. Barberena could easily fight in the middleweight division, and he just beat Robbie Lawler. So he's on a bit of a hot streak right now. So it'll be interesting to see how this fight goes. It'll be up to Dos Anjos to be very technical, because very quickly this fight could be turned into a scrap. So I'm looking forward to that one. Obviously, Tai Shui, got the happy dad going. I ain't doing a Shui on the show. Why? Because your boy Kyle hasn't hit me back yet in the DMs. But, we'll get there, baby. We're going to make it, as they say in the NFT world. Tai Tuivasa versus Sergey Pavlovich. Listen, I gave pretty good feedback and analysis last week. I think it's Sergey's time. He's on his run. I think Tai is, always going to remain one of the most well-liked and marketable guys in the UFC heavyweight division. But, unfortunately, I do see him taking more of the spectacle/gatekeeper role in the division. Do I think Pavlovich is going to be a world champ? Not sure. Don't think so. Think that, like a Volkan Ozdemir, he'll have his run and then kind of go away once the champ defeats him. But that's going to be an interesting one. So stay tuned, because I'm going to be posting clips that I did on last weekend, because Fight Club's own Dylan Rush, who also did a great job in the PFL event, asked me that question in the Q&A. So I'll repost those clips so that you could stay up to date, because that was very good analysis, and I was waiting till this fight week to post those. So that's another great fight. Eric Anders, is he ever in a boring fight? Definitely not. Fighting Kyle Dackhouse. So that's going to be an interesting one. And then last but not least, we got the prelims, baby. Nico Price versus Philip Rowe. Expect that fight to end in a TKO. Both guys always put everything on the line. Nico Price can't afford to lose any more in the UFC, so you bet your ass that even if he's going down, he'll be going down fucking swinging for at least that 50 G's. Angela Hill, everybody's favorite fighter to bet on, fighting Emily Ducote. Clay Guida versus Scott Holtzman. This is what I like to see, baby. Why? Why the fuck did we see Frankie Edgar versus Chris Gutierrez? Why did we have to put a legend in Frankie Edgar against Chris Gutierrez? A legend versus a guy who's trying to fight for the title, only to see Frankie get knocked out in front of his sold-out crowd, his friends, and his family. Bullshit. Clay Guida, though, is fighting Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman. That's a good matchup. Both guys that are veterans of the game. Clay's been there longer, obviously, who are going to push the action, but are more on, the same relative level right now, and have kind of brushed along the same waters. Holtzman has fought the likes of Jim Miller, who's kind of in the same category, as a Clay Guida. I love that matchup. Two guys who are veterans, that are, maybe on the back nine, as they say. And then we got Michael Johnson versus Mark Diakese. Let's be real here. Straight kickboxing match. Whether it goes 1 round or all 3, this is going to be a straight kickboxing match. Michael Johnson always brings it. Mark Diakese as well. Both guys who are always hungry, looking for the finish, but have no problem standing up and banging for all 15 minutes. And, the veteran in Michael Johnson needs this victory, But let's just say the young buck or the younger buck in Mark Diakese might need it a little bit more. So that's going to be a great one. Darren Elkins versus Jonathan Pierce. Come on now, Darren the Damage Elkins. Has this guy ever been in a bad fight? I bet you $1 million someone bleeds in that fight. So that's going to be a good one. Tracy Cortez versus Amanda Ribas. Both of these fighters, not only are they gorgeous, but they're 1 or 2 fights away for fighting for the title. So, you know, that's an interesting one, and that's on the fucking prelims. And then Israel's own Natan Levy fighting Gennaro Valdez, 7-1 versus 10-1. Bro, this is on the prelims of a fucking UFC card that's for free. It's not even a pay-per-view. This card is stacked. If we were to look at the calendar from the past UFC events that fans would have had to pay for, there are at least 1 to 3 events that we would rather pay for this one instead of pay for the ones that were actually pay-per-views. So congrats to the UFC on putting on a great fight in Orlando, the great state of Florida, on December 3rd. We're closing into that year end. We didn't get to talk about Akhmedov, Yuri, Glover, and all of that jazz. We'll be talking about it on the next episode. Enjoy your happy dad. Enjoy your week. Fuck bitches, get money. AC Radio, we're out, baby.
G's, no design on my jacket. Work hard, now I'm changing my bracket. Talk tough, we ain't hear that racket. Dots came in, you know how to stack it. Take it wrong, but I'ma need my ends though. I got tigers on my chest like Kenzo. Rail came, yeah, he putting that Benz though. Carol's here, man, you know he stay 10 toes. Big dog, man, you know I ain't worried. Bent up, so